今天没有连线公式，我们怎么教他？这个参加。
Hi, Dr. Tonini.
Here.时间要开始。
他是不是最好讲的？
是他面对我说的。
对啊，他没有叫我嘛，所以他是不是不知道我讲的？这是我讲。
那现在这个时候是应该是你说话呀。
Hi guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi everyone.
So let's get started, right?
Yes. We are live also on Facebook. I did it. So nice.
Yeah.
Welcome,
Okay.
our Bulgarian friends. Welcome to the excellent course, session 6, presented by Perfect Endo. I'm Min, your host tonight. This is Oscar, the director of Perfect Endo.
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
This is sales manager, Abby.
Hello.
First of
Hello,
all,
Abby.
shout out to Perfect Endo, shout out to Endo BG. These two great companies made this amazing webinar happen. We got you a great lecture tonight. The legend, the gold member of Style Italiano Endodontics, Dr. Riccardo is here. Also, there's going to be 3 questions about the lecture right after it. So stick around. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Boris now. He will introduce you the Endo BG company and the course flow of tonight. Dr. Boris, it's all yours.
Здравейте, колеги! От името на EndoBG и от мое име искам да ви благодаря за отделеното време, което надявам се, че ще бъде ползотворно за всички нас. Казвам се Борислав Цаневски и съм практикуващ зъболекар, като вас, от 18 години. В последните 10 интереса ми се насочи основно към коренно лечение, а в последните 4-5 години развивам практика ограничена до ендодонтията в град Варна. Целта на днешното събитие, среща, е да обсъдим един важен аспект на ендодонското лечение, а именно механичната препарация на каналната система. Акцент в тази лекция на доктор Тонини ще бъде системата MG3 Gold, която напоследък придобива особена популярност. Макар за всички да е ясно, че универсална система няма, бих казал, че тази има адекватно приложение в широк набор от случаи, както за първично коренно лечение, така и за релечение. Нашият лектор, доктор Тонини, ще разгледа особеностите на работа с тази система, пречупено през неговия опит. След лекцията с продължителност около 40-50 минути ще зададем 3 въпроса към участниците от България с награда за този, който отговори най-правилно. Отговорите трябва да бъдат написани в чата, дясната лента на Zoom. Следват въпроси и отговори към доктор Тони в рамките на около 20 на минути и след това той ще избере участник, който е отговорил най-правилно. Наградите ще бъдат изпратени от EndoBG. Моля, комуникирайте на английски език, предвид това, че срещата е мултинационална. Моля, не се притеснявайте от нивото на знание на езика, за никой от нас той не е матерен. И така, да не губим повече време, нека посрещнем доктор Рикардо Тонини. Доктор Tonini, it's your turn now.
Thank you, Boris. Thank you to Perfect Endo, and thank you to all here connected here on the stage. And I'm really proud to be here tonight live on Facebook and on Zoom. And thanks to everyone to be online. As always, people will watch again the live in the next days, so they can follow it. And my intent tonight is to share my experience in endodontics and my knowledge about shaping and how to shape in a proper way difficult anatomies, and first of all, how to decide since the beginning which systematic choose for our clinical cases, or in case if we can choose since the beginning maybe one systematic that can answer to all our needs for during our endodontic treatment. So I will share with you my laptop, my Keynote, and you can ask some questions, and in case Boris will stop me and will interrupt me without any problem, and I will reply immediately to your questions. If not, at the end, we'll review some questions, and after, as I think they already explained you, we have a surprise at the end of this webinar. So let me share with you my presentation, and let's start with a keynote presentation. So let me arrange. Okay, perfect. So what's the topic of how to choose the right shaping is since the first step of endodontic treatment. This is our intent. So how to move inside the difficulties of the endodontics. First of all, you can see on my back that you are welcome on my office when you want, and here where I work and when I record my videos with the microscope. So first of all, what we need in endodontics, we need to know the anatomy. We have to understand the anatomy before the shipping and before moving inside the anatomy, because if not, the risk is maybe if we are not able to recognize in a difficult anatomy, we can only break a file here, and we can say that our success can be blocked immediately. Or we have to be able to understand if we have a delaceration of the anatomy, if we have a difficult curvatures, if we have to shape anatomies like that, and of course, how to manage in a proper way. So anatomy is the real deal, and during treatment and retreatments. And what we are looking for tonight is a systematic that maybe can be used for all our clinical case in a predictable way, of course, but always following some rules. So when we retreat a tooth like that, we know that maybe we have to remove some gutta-perca, so we need files that maybe are able also to remove gutta-perca. We need the small files that maybe are able to establish a glide path, find the patency, keep the patency, and even if maybe sometimes we are not able to reach the working length in all the canal, try to understand when stop before doing errors, because sometimes half of the job is more than enough, but of course, the half of the job that I did here was more than enough, but probably here we have a confluence. So we are looking for a systematic and a sequence of files that must be predictable. And of course, we have to remember that we cannot forget that the last step is the restoration of the endodontic treated tooth. If we don't restore in a proper way, in a predictable way, in a conservative way, the risk is also that probably even if we shape in an ultra conservative way our root canal system, probably here we can have a failure, a second time failure. So overlay in composite is suggested when we can, or a crown, full crown, of course, is suggested. But also from this X-ray, I cannot say that this is an easy case, because here I have a lot of coronal interferences. I have canals that are narrow and small. I don't see if there are curvatures. So I need a sequence that maybe can help me since the first step in reaching the apical region without any problem or any further error. And of course, and we will understand together how to recognize maybe the dangerous curvature in the apical zone. But and first of all, how to consider curvatures, what is difficult in the coronal part, in the middle part of the root canal system, or in the apical part. What we are looking for from our shaping is this outcome. But what we are looking for in endodontic treatment is an endodontic treatment that must be predictable since the beginning in terms of shaping, cleaning, filling, and rest. So our project must be considered in all-in-one. If we forget just a step, we can only fail and we can have a failure in the next future. So not just shaping, not just access cavity, not just cleaning, but a sequence of things that we have to follow, protocols that we have to follow in order to keep the root canal treated tooth in place for a long time. And this is exactly what the endodontist must know. So the endo nowadays is not just a part made by a part. Okay, let me do a access cavity, let me shape, and my endo treatment will finish here. No, the modern endodontist must also understand that we have to restore the tooth, we have to place a post, we have to place a crown, or a direct restoration or indirect restoration. This is the endodontic job. And of course, we can choose many systematics on the market, but sometimes on the market the risk is to do lot of confusion around instruments, what to use, what is the best one, and there is a lot of confusion because people sometimes they follow brands without understanding that maybe here there is the most important thing is to follow the right systematic, the right sequence. And if we start in mixing files, companies, manufacturers, and so on, the risk is also to do a huge disaster. So what we are looking for, of course, for our root canal treatments is a systematic and a sequence that maybe can satisfy us since the beginning and can avoid errors like mistakes, because as as operators, the risk is always to think in this way. If we shape a lot, if we use a lot of files, we can be more efficient. If we overshape a canal, maybe we can be more efficient. No, endodontics is not this. If we're looking for a strategy in endodontics, we need to consider the operator part. And so we need to consider that the operator at some point can do only some errors, even if we are using new files. So what I want to share with you is, since the beginning, if we want to reach the success, we have to just choose the right systematic. Don't do confusion with rotary files. Do the shape as minimum as practical. Don't overshape, because if we try to overshape a canal, the risk is maybe to use too many files, fail, because after such size we can have only stiff files or files that maybe can produce micro cracks in the apical region or micro cracks also inside the anatomy. Or we can fail in some way because after some point we cannot focus more on this root canal treatment. So my intent is today to find out the best systematic that maybe we can use for all the clinical case, even if we're talking about treatment and retreatments. And the systematic, the sequence of files that maybe can keep the strategy at the higher level without reducing the final outcome. And we have also to remember one thing. Okay, we can choose the best systematic on the market, the best sequence on the market, but the risk is also that maybe we have to remember what? We have to remember that the anatomy is a real challenge. So even if we are using the most modern rotary file systematic, the risk is that we leave at least 35% of the anatomy untouched. And of course, we can shape, but we have to remember that we have also to clean and fill three-dimensionally the root canal system. Without a full and complete management of the anatomy, the risk is to fail and not reach the success. But why we shape a canal? Why? Our intent, while we are shaping a canal, we have to focus our attention on the main details that we have available nowadays for the modern endodontics. Our intent is, of course, we shape because we want to remove vital or necrotic tissue from the main root canal system. So we need a sequence of files that maybe can help us to do that. We have to create a sufficient space for irrigating and in case for placing medication. Has no sense to reduce the shaping at maximum, because if we do a minimal shaping, a minimal, I mean something that is without any sense, we cannot deliver our irrigants in the deepest part of the root canal system, and we cannot 3D fill the root canal system in a proper way. Just an example, when we shape at 0.3, 0.4, in the 0.3 taper, the risk is, okay, we shape it in 0.3, but we don't know after how to deliver irrigants or how to obturate the root canal system. So maybe we feel like heroes because we maintained the original anatomy, but from the other side, bacteria are telling us, thank you so much. You left us here. We will do a party later, and thanks to your minimal invasive and stupid invasive shipping, now we can continue our life here and we can keep the infection alive. And of course, when we shape, we have to remember that if we have not to shape minimum, but we have not to overshape, because if we overshape, we can create iatrogenic damages, we can create stripping, we can create zipping of the apical size. If we have a curvature and we shape the root canal system, the risk is that we destroy the anatomy. And we have to, as I told you, we have to shape because we want to fill properly the root canal system, and the wound Guttapercha technique is always my choice. But nowadays, of course, we can use also bioceramic sealer if you want, but also here, we have to use them carefully. And if we overshape a root canal system, the risk is also to extrude a lot of debris. So we need a systematic sequence of files that maybe can produce not so many remnants, or maybe that can remove the remnants from the canal since the beginning. And so we can have all the remnants and debris in the access cavity and not over the apex, behind the apex. And we have, of course, to try to find the sequence that maybe can preserve the sound root dentin in order to avoid the crack of the tooth in the next future. This is a real challenge, because also in a simple case, yes, it's a simple case, but with a huge lesion. And what I did the minimum and practical shape that I can do. So retreatment, shaping, it was around 40.06 in taper. I followed the sequence of cleaning. So my protocol of cleaning, I did a proper 3D cleaning. So nothing incredible, nothing like what Bezos did today. So fly to the space. Nothing like that. I just followed the protocols, and I shaped minimum as practical, not overshape, not too small. And after a few years, you can appreciate the healing process. So this is endo, the right balance. We need a balance. We need a balance between shaping, cleaning, and filling. And of course, as I showed you before, 3D, the seal of the coronal seal. Without a glued and proper coronal seal, we cannot say, okay, we are successful. And every one of us, of course, is looking for lateral canals. But we know from all many articles that lateral canals that we can see here in the X-ray maybe is just the 10% of the anatomy when we feel it. And what we have to do is shaping, not destroy the tooth. Try to shape and remove immediately the smear layer in order to not pack here in the lateral canals smear layer this situation. And so what we need is to understand since the beginning the anatomy. If we don't check the anatomy since the beginning, we will never be able to be successful. And anatomy means straight canal, as I showed you before, or curvature. Is it easy in your opinion? What do you see here? What do you see here? I see a lot of trouble in all three cases. Why? What's the worst situation in your opinion here? For me, because I shaped all these canals, I found, of course, this clinical case as the most dangerous for our files that we have on the market nowadays. Because here we can make it straight, we can destroy the anatomy. If instead we have a curvature in the middle of the root or in the apical region, here every file can be flexible, but we need sometimes to manage in a proper way the coronal pre-flaring, the coronal part. If not, this curvature can in some way affect also the apical shaping, because here, considering that we have one curvature, two curvature, and three maybe in the apical region, in this region, as Beruti showed us in a beautiful article, here we can have some file that can rotate without any control. And here the risk is that due to this interference, here we can overshape the canal and we have a lot of instability of the file. So we are looking for a good analysis of the curvature and how much the curvature location can could in some way affect the resistance of nickel titanium files. The curvature location analysis from my side is the secret since the beginning. I'm not afraid if I have a curvature in the apical region or in the middle of the root. I'm more afraid if I have a curvature here in the coronal part. Here I have to be careful. Here I have to analyze the X-rays since the beginning in order to not do errors. And error is not only when we break a file, but it is also an error when we overshape in the original anatomy and when we destroy completely the anatomy itself. So here is the curvature. Here is, you can see a clinical case that can put me in trouble. Not this one. This one is easy because we have a curvature in the apical region, middle, and more coronally, this is more dangerous. But of course, this one is more dangerous than this one. So here we are going to be more careful. And we have curvature location, of course, that can be in also three-dimensionally positioned. We can have in not only in one plane, but of course can be in a different part, in different configuration, in different situations. And what we have to do to analyze is also try to understand from the anatomy, from the X-ray, if we can shape or not in a predictable way the three-dimensional the root canal system. Okay, so we have Also, these anatomies, they are straight, nothing difficult, but what I did was a good management of the coronal interferences. And what we want to avoid is to avoid transportation of the original anatomy. And here, the heat treatment of our nickel titanium files is mandatory. So why we choose a heat treated file? Not because we want to feel modern or because we see on the market a lot of advertising. And what we can see is that any file, heat treated file, can preserve more the anatomy than conventional file. And the difference between files are, of course, different heat treatments, because we can have soft or not soft files. And what we are looking for is maybe something that can in some way satisfy all our needs, all our requests in terms of heat treatments and in terms of cross sections. A typical example is this one. This is a minimally invasive shaping. Yes, minimally invasive shaping, but was risky, because if I was not able to shape with the sequence, the systematic MG3 systematic here, this curvature, the only risk is to do a beautiful shaping of this curvature also in this part. So make it straight, maybe a stripping, and a risk of a damage that we don't want to do. The same story here is the same thing, the same expression that I showed you before. We want to preserve here the anatomy, or we want to preserve the anatomy in this region. So what we want to avoid, of course, is the failure in terms of resistance of our files. And so what we want to avoid is the fracture of files in all these anatomies, in all these curvatures. The reason why also a heat-treated file sequence is suggested, because maybe we can avoid more flexural fatigue, but maybe not torsional. So if we want to avoid torsional fracture, we have to follow also a technique. So it's important the heat treatment of the files, but it's also important the technique that we want to use in order to shape all kinds of anatomies. Easy, medium, difficult, difficult. We want to avoid this. We want to avoid breakage, because after, if not, we are obliged to maybe to decide if we have to remove, bypass, or so on all the anatomy. So we need a technique, and any sequence of files can be chosen by us, but we have to follow the crown down technique. Why? Because we can measure the working length in a proper way, step by step. We avoid internal transport. That is exactly what I showed you before. We want to avoid internal transport of the curvature immediately. We want to preserve more the anatomy. We want to keep the shaping centered, produce less debris, more space for irrigants, better apical cleaning, of course, less debris extrusion, and less apical blockage. So I showed you why we want to shape a canal, what we pretend for our shaping. I showed you the crown down technique, and I explained to you why heat treated files. Now we have the reason why we have to follow the crown down technique, and we are adding step by step few informations, and at the end, of course, we will close the circle, so we will be able to understand what to use in a proper way and in a predictable way. If we are still convinced that manual files are the right choice for the first step of the crown down technique and the first step for dealing with the anatomy, sorry, we're wrong, because of course 08 and 010 are my choice for the first part of the first scouting, but not 15, because 15 can only create beautiful ledges. So what we are looking for in the first step of our root canal treatment phase is a good clean glide path for our files. But in order to understand why glide path is important and why we have to strongly believe in glide path made it mechanically, we have to follow a few rules. So to remember a few things, in order to achieve a successful obturated root canal system, of course, we have to shape it three-dimensionally and clean it three-dimensionally. But in order to be cleaned and shaped, a glide path has been too successfully prepared. The glide path is the secret that we have to understand in endodontics. And the glide path is when we can follow the anatomy from the orifice to the apical region every time we want without any obstacle like ledge or debris. And the glide path in some anatomies is easy to reach. The straight canal that I showed you before is a straight canal, and I reached the glide path in 2 seconds. But instead, if we have a huge curvature in the coronal part, the risk is that maybe we can reach and establish the glide path after 3 hours, 2 hours in a difficult situation. And the glide path is exactly the way that we have in our clinical practice, the way that we have for understanding if a clinical case is easy or not. On the market, and this is an MG3 sequence, part of the sequence, and I will explain you step by step the sequence. We have a file are designed for a file is this kind of shape is designed for coronal pre-flaring or a removal of interferences in order to avoid file breakage or in order to avoid debris packing in the apical region. So when we have to approach the anatomy before introducing in the deepest part of the root canal system a key file, is better to remove since the beginning coronal interferences and try to establish and do the coronal pre-flaring and glide path at the coronal part, medium part of the root canal system with rotary files. After, we can introduce a manual file. If not, here we can have a huge interferences when if we push a manual file in this anatomy, we can have a long way because we have a huge interference and our key file, the head, will be here. So if we take the working length now, we can measure 22. After that, we start with the shaping. If we don't follow the crown down technique, after shaping, we will have here that the measure is 20 and maybe no more 22. So we are focused again on 22 and probably we can overshape the root canal system in the apical region and we can extrude a lot of debris, destroy the anatomy, and we are not doing endo. We are doing a disaster. Instead, if we remove since the beginning the coronal interferences here, after we establish a glide path in the middle of the root or coronal part of the root, and after only we keep and we take the working length, we follow the crown down technique, we follow the right sequence, and we use less files, but in a proper way and with the right concept. On the market, we have also here a lot of cross sections. The most important thing is to understand which cross section we are using, because if we are using a triangular or a square cross section are two different things. And also we have to consider if cross sections are centered or maybe if they are active like blades, like with this cross section, of course, will cut more than this one or this one. And so we have to know very well our sequence of files, because we have to understand since the beginning if our files are in a cutting design or in a not cutting design. So heat treatment is important, but also the cross section, the cutting efficacy of the files, if we want to reach, following the crown down technique, results like this one. like this one. So what we are looking for is the answer, how to do that without destroying the tooth, without make this curvature straight. So we have to preserve the anatomy, we have to restore the anatomy, we have not to over destroy the anatomy. And tonight, I'm really proud also to introduce you a sequence that I selected in my daily practice, that is MG3 sequence from Perfect Angle. MG3 sequence is a sequence that probably you can buy in a box like this, and you can buy in a blister, so you have a sequence that has been already designed. Since the first images, you can understand that it is a sequence that we can consider really complete for treatment and for retreatment. Why? Because a file like that is useful for removal of the coronal interferences, but is also ideal for removal of gutta perca during retreatments. So it's not a sequence that you have to use only for some teeth, but is a sequence for a daily practice. A file like this, you can understand that a file like this, since the beginning, is a file with a design that maybe is useful also for removal of gutta perca, with proper shaping. Instead, when we see this shape, they are files for glide path, shaping, and shaping of wide and huge canal. So here inside we can find everything, but of course we need a sequence because here are mixed, and instead I have to explain you how to use it. The first analysis is this. When we purchase a perfect angle sequence, the right idea is to put inside the box a description of the sequence. This is useful for us and for our dental assistant. First of all, we have to know the cross sections. We have inside this file the shorter one that has a taper 10, so is a really taper one. 19 is the length, and we have to use it at 350 RPM, so a good speed, but not so much. Triangular cross section. This is useful for cutting, and we need it for removal of coronal interference. Instead, when we want to establish a glide path and we want to cut less, we need a cross section that is square cross section. In this way, we can cut less, preserve a lot the anatomy, establish the glide path, and P1 and P2 are ideally designed for that. They have 0.2 taper. They have a tip that is 16 for the first one and 19. And so the sequence is really well designed. We have to be careful with the first one, with the starter, because of course we have not to push inside an MB2 since the beginning without any reason and without any strategy. So is a file that we have to use up and down, few with the excursion of this way, so with the brushing motion on the external wall, in order to facilitate the penetration of the next two files, P1 and P2. After that, I will show you also the key file where I want to place it. We can shape the canal and we can decide to use a G1 or G2 and after G3. G1 is 20.04 in terms of shaping, triangular, so active, cutting efficacy, because now we have to cut, 0.4 in taper, 0.6 instead the G2, and sorry, instead the right thing is, okay, the biggest one, G3, has a 35 of the tip, not centered, off-center cross section, 0.4 in taper. So with a large file, 35, we can present the anatomy because we can work in this way, so not centered cross section, and we can establish a 35.04 taper in a canal in an easy way without destroying the curvature. My suggestion is always try to stay here and use only the 35 if you are mainly dealing with palatal root, lower distal root, or a premolar, or central incisor, also what you want. The daily sequence in my clinical office is, of course, this one. This is a tooth, okay, a tooth with scouting at the coronal part. We remove the coronal interferences, not at the working length P1 and P2. After that, we remove the coronal interferences, we can take the working length. So P1 and P2 and the working length. And here it's an easy game. From this point to the future is an easy game because we have to use only G1. And if we see debris on the files, we can say, okay, I shaped enough. Or instead, if I don't see debris with the visual gauging here in the apical region, we have to use G2 or G3, up to us. This is MG3 sequence, but also we can have MG2, the sister, the brother, if we want a sequence of these files. The difference is here, because with a file PX, we can use only just one for doing coronal removal of the coronal interferences and doing the glide. It depends on the clinical case. For the daily practice, my suggestion is stay here. So a right sequence that can be used also for treatment and retreatments, because of course, in MG2 sequence, we cannot use this file for retreatments since the beginning because it's flexible, not real cutting efficacy, and so we cannot use this one. MG3 sequence is here. So let me unbox with you the box and let me shape with you some files, some anatomies. So after that, I open the box, I can see what inside. So G1 and G3, okay. Informations that are really important, just like a reminder, if not, you introduce a file inside the anatomy without any sense. Okay, this is the sequence that we have available. And now let me shape some different anatomies, from the easiest to the more complex anatomies. This is an easy anatomy, but with some interferences, coronal interferences. So it's not an easy, really easy anatomy. Let's analyze it. Let's remove coronally some interferences. Okay, I saw my X-ray. I saw that I have coronal interferences. I saw that I have an anatomy after in front of me. So just 2-3 millimeters of the starter in order to remove what? The most dangerous zone, the coronal interferences, the zone that can make your root canal treatment unpredictable. After, I can do my, I start with the pre-flaring, and I'm starting with establishing the glide path. You can appreciate like P1 is easily introduced inside the anatomy, and you can follow since the beginning apical deep curvature in an easy way. P1, P2, the glide path is done. Now G1. G1 is less heat treated, so, and with the triangular cross section, so lot of cutting efficacy, lot of capability to remove debris. And you can see also that inside raising, we can have a screwing effect, but it's inside raising, not inside the original anatomy of the natural tooth. Shaping, I took the working length, of course, after that I remove the coronal interferences and before introducing the glide path files. So after 2 or 3 strokes, I'm able to reach the working length. Okay, but what about difficult anatomies? So I'm talking about these curvatures that are coronally and also apically. The same story. We remove coronal interferences. So I'm working here at this level coronally. I don't want to put inside my rotary starter file in the deepest part because it's a risky situation. After, I can remove again more coronal interferences. I can introduce files for the glide path, and after that I establish the glide path is an easy game, even if it is a challenge anatomy. Of course, my intent will be try to shape not 25/06, but maybe 20/04 in this case, because 04 is a good taper that maybe can save me in these situations. But 06, okay, you can also use 06. It depends on the systematic that you want to use for 3D fill the root canal system. So shaping in an easy way, P2, so the second file for the glide path, can follow in an easy way an anatomy that is not so easy to follow. Is a bit a challenge. And after we use G1, and we can see how the anatomy is preserved, how safe is shaping, and with avoiding any breakage of the files. So my sequence since the beginning can be in a sequence like this, like MG3. MG3 that can really satisfy my request for my daily practice for shaping and for proper management of any kind of anatomy. Let's start with this anatomy, vivo. So not easy case. Before introducing any key file, let me immediately shape a bit the orifice or removal of some pulp tissue. So P1, really in a gentle way, don't push down. Gentle way, okay. After we clean, of course, we have to deal with the really difficult calcified canal. Okay, just in the first 2-3 millimeters. We clean. Now, if you want, you can reuse the starter, or you can do that. Okay. Why I didn't use the starter since the beginning? Just because I had a lot of really small diameter, and the risk is if we place instead a file with a huge tip diameter, we can print our shape and our way, and we will not follow the original way. So if we have a really narrow canal, like in this case, my suggestion is try to do the opposite. Before the glide path file, P1, after P2 for the first 2-3 millimeters, after the starter, and after again the files for the glide path. We have X-ray, so from the X-ray we can understand the working length radiographically. After now, I can take my working length. After that, I took my working length. I can shape with the P1, like in this case. This is the right way, so strokes up and down with the endomotor. The speed is 350. So this is the endomotor. Okay, 350. The speed is you can set on the endomotor. You can set the speed. You can choose your speed, your program. You can do what you want. This is G1. So is not so is heat treated, but we have the cutting efficacy. Take a look, visual gauging. So more than enough. I don't need further files or further things to do. And shaping until the working length. Okay, shaping. Okay, and it's an easy game. So even if we are dealing with difficult anatomies, our intent is reach the apex, preserve the anatomy, not overshape, but clean, and 3D fill the root canal system. So this is our intent. Okay. And after, we 3D fill the root canal system, backfilling, the bioceramic sealer in this case. You can choose also another sealer, 3D filling, work with the Perca technique, and this is the shaping. So anatomy preserved here and not straight. Or in retreatments, take a look. In retreatments, I can use starter as a good file for gutta percha removal. So a double use. The reason why I love it. This is the G2. So because it's a retreatment. And after, I will introduce a key file for the working length. But before, if I start immediately with manual files, I can only spend 2 hours to reach and remove some gutta percha without any sense, So we have a sequence and we have to be smart, not be stupid. It's a modern endodontics. So move to the rotary files. But of course, if you introduce here a file that is really heat treated, you can do nothing. And so in your office, you have to purchase 35 sequences when instead maybe you can purchase at the beginning or just one and use it in a proper way, in a double use. So removal of the previous obturation system, and after shipping, cleaning and filling. So even if I'm retreating a tooth, I can make it in an easy way, and I can make it in a proper way and in a predictable way. This is the way that I love to do endo. And the same story here. So removal of the pulp, glide path. Take a look to the angle of this curvature. Of course, a small file like a distal canal like G1 is more than enough here. If don't pretend to overshape this canal, but also here, don't pretend. But what you have to do is removal of the coronal interferences in order to not overshape this part. And if you have an anatomy that is unpredictable in this situation, don't try to introduce stiff files, but introduce really flexible files. Here I can show you, okay, and shape it. No more. And clean, and after, bioceramic sealer, gutta percha cone, and you can decide what to do. So this is my way for managing in a proper way a root canal system in a predictable way, and without the risk of doing mistakes. So my choice is always to choose a sequence with inside a sequence of files, and try to use this sequence for multiple use, like treatment and like retreatments. The reason why MG3 sequence is, in my opinion, really smart, because we can mix the first file that is a starter file is a file that is short and can in some way be used for treatment and retreatment. Cutting efficacy, small is not so heat treated, and so it's useful. After we have P1 and P2 that instead they have a square section and they can be used for glide path. And after we have G1 and G2 and G3 that they have a different diameter, different taper, and they are heat treated, but not so much heat treated, and so they can be used in the right way because they don't lose the cutting efficacy. They are bendable, but they are heat treated, but they don't lose the cutting efficacy. This is another secret that this systematic has. So, Boris, I try to share the reason why I consider MG3 sequence as a right sequence. I don't know if you have questions by yourself, or if you have someone has questions, put in the chat and we'll reply. If not, we will see and we will move forward. Let me know.
Yeah, everything's fine. I completely understand your discussion about stuff. I liked very much that anatomy is a challenge. It is always a challenge. and that matches perfectly my understanding. I believe we can move forward. I have some more stuff to discuss with you and clear out with public. But should we go to the questions now toward the audience?
Yes, you can copy and paste the 3 questions for the audience. It's better to put inside the chat, or I can, if you want, I can do with my voice, and the first one that will reply in a proper way will win something from you. So the first question is, what is the glide path? The second question is, why is it important to preserve the anatomy, in your opinion? And how much is important a heat treatment for our files? Why, basically, files are heat treated? So the first one who will reply probably will win, but I want to see good replies. And Boris, what they will win?
The participant that answers first will receive a pack of MG3 Gold, an assorted pack. Yeah, that's for Bulgarian participants. We cannot send everywhere in the world. So I would like to translate the questions in Bulgarian. Can I? Yeah. И така, обръщам се към българските участници. Мисля, че всички разбирате добре английски, но все пак да уточним. Въпросите си: какво е glide path? Защо е важно да се запазва анатомията и колко важно е термичната обработка на пилите. Моля, побързайте, ние ще продължим дискусията, но този, който отговори най-бързо и най-удовлетворително, ще спечели наградата от EndoBG. Yeah, we can proceed further, Dr. Tonini. So I would like to go back to a question that or to some information that you shared with us. It is always a question how much is enough about preparation, about the size of preparation. So you mentioned that about visual gauging. Would you explain more about the audience? What do you mean visual gauging?
Yes, visual gauging is, first of all, gauging is when we want to measure the apical diameter, the apical size. Usually we do it manually, and we use a sequence of files, manual files, in order to understand if we have the good diameter, so if the files block at the diameter of the apex, and in the next file maybe bigger. So if we measure, if we gauge the apical diameter around 25, after we are expecting manually that the 30 can stay shorter, the 40 shorter, and so on. This is the general rule that we are looking for. When we use rotary, after that we use rotary, we can do it again with manually to understand if we shape enough the root canal system and the apical region, but we can see also what we shaped, taking a lot of attention with, of course, loops or microscope to the last 4 millimeters of the rotary files flutes, if they are full of debris or not. If they are full of debris, I mean all the space between flutes full of debris, it means that we shaped and we shaped exactly the taper of the file, and we print the taper of the file. We print 25 or 6, and so we already know that our apical diameter and taper will be 25 or 6. It's not necessary to check again, maybe with key files that are made in stainless steel, because if we have a curvature, you will never be able to follow the curvature with a manual file made in stainless steel with a diameter of 25 or 30. But also, even if you purchase manual files made in nickel titanium, probably you are not able to follow deep curvatures. So it's better to check. It's better to check what you shaped, taking a look to the flutes and to your lateral files in the last 4 millimeters. If the flutes instead are empty, so they are not full of debris, it means that you can shape with the next file. So you can use the next file, dedicating your shaping, of course, maybe to the apical region. So you can reduce the taper and you can increase the diameter. So 35/04 instead of 25 after that you use 25/06. We need someone who can reply. Okay, Boris, who can reply here. So just reply, or you can reply also in Facebook. I have a question, Boris, in Facebook. When we from Hamed Maurus, when we must use EDTA during shaping procedures, I love to use EDTA just at the end. And the end of my cleaning process, because if I use DTA while I'm shaping, I can really destroy the anatomy because everything is soft, and I can open also the gate for further collagen erosion where if I use after hypochlorite. So hypochlorite while you are shaping. Oh, here we have
on the other hand, EDTA is neutralizing hypo, so you're doing nothing. If you use them alternatively, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense if you use alternative because you will obtain a desert instead of a tooth. You can destroy the tooth because we have to remember that the main reason of breakage of the tooth is the chemical action of our irrigants. It's not the access cavity, it's not the shaping, but it's the chemical aggression of our irrigant. So we have a good answer, in my opinion, from Vanya, but because Elena replied only to the first question, so instead Vanya replied in a proper way, in my opinion, in the chat. So Vanya, of course, won, in my opinion, the MG3 sequence, maybe not just one box. Try to be more generous because she wrote in a proper way. And if Elena will reply also to the other two questions, maybe she can win also. Let me say hello also to Mark Habib, my colleague that is watching the Facebook Live. Ciao, Mark. And let me see if I have other questions. Okay, no. So we need, if someone else want to reply, at the moment we can say that, okay, oh, this is Lava won again MG3. Yes, good answers. We can select also another one. So we have to give a price.
No problem. Yeah, I read the answer of this is how it's completely.
Yeah, Elena,
right.
She was the first. So we have to be gentle with Elena because she opened the gate.
Yeah, okay.
After the other two, okay. If there is another one, the last one who will reply to the question will have MG3 sequence. And after that you use the MG3 sequence, you can also reply or give me answer or give me your feedback. And of course, I will reply you and I will be able to further support in the future. Here we have the treatment of rotary files. Yes, the rotary instrument. Okay, and Helena replied, so, okay, we have three winners. You have.
Yeah, okay, yeah. You will receive the rotary files, yeah. Благодаря на всички, ще получите всяка една от вас по упаковка от MG3. Чудесни отговори, само женско участие, не знам защо така. Can we discuss something else about the cross section? It is somehow a big trend in endodontics, different shapes, different alloys and stuff like that. It is like everyone wants to prove something, but where is the truth? What is the right design of a cross section? On the one hand, we have cutting efficiency. We need it because we want to not to spend too much time in that. And on the other, we want to follow the shape, the original shape. So
when we need the right balance every time between cross section, heat treatment, okay, and of the files, and the cross section. Of course, if we have an S shape, it will be really active because we have two blades. Two blades are really active and can cut a lot, but can be really aggressive if not heat treated. Or we need, in any case, a good cutting efficacy because we want to remove debris. And good the cutting efficacy can remove debris. So we need a right balance. And an example, the triangular cross section is a good one because we have three blades. They cut, they are not so aggressive, but they can remove debris. Instead, a square cross section is really conservative. So we have not a huge cutting efficacy, but P1 and P2 can maybe follow more the idea of the glide path without removing a lot of debris, without packing a lot of part tissue in the apical region. So they can remove it. The right balance, in my opinion, is try to understand that, of course, we love rotary files that are heat treated. But if we use rotary files that are too much heat treated, we have to be careful and we have to increase the speed in case. Because we can, they lose a lot of their cutting efficacy. And if they don't cut, we push more and we can break them. Instead, the solution is we can increase the speed. If instead we use a rotary file that has been heat treated, not so much, we can keep the speed low and we can have also a cross section that maybe is active too. So it's always a right balance. My suggestion
we need
is
the right balance. Yeah.
Don't
cutting,
follow
centering,
only...
and alloy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I believe we have 2-3 questions on the chat.
Yeah, okay. A question about I can see about hypochlorite. I use hypochlorite and at the end EDTA, so no more irrigants. I don't like to use chlorhexidine and something like that. And after other questions, if not, we can say goodbye, guys. Okay, we have another question here. Thank you for the stream. What do you do if you need more than 3506? Also here, if I need more than 3506, depends how much more. If I need 40, you can push a bit also the file over the working length, I mean ½ millimeter, and you will shape 40. See, if instead you need the 6003, here you have to understand if you have to shape really the canal, or maybe if we have to change or maybe only clean and change the systematic for filling, I mean NTA instead of gutta-perca, or instead you can have another sequence or another files with larger diameters. In my personal activity, when I shape around 25 or 06 is nice because I can see a lot of visual gauging. And after I can check also with gutta-perca cone and I'm really satisfied. So if instead I use 60, I don't need maybe to shape 60 if I need a tooth with the 16 diameter because maybe it's a weak tooth and doesn't need to be shaped, but more cleaned and 3D filled. What irrigant are you going to use if the patient is allergic to hypochlorite? Allergic to hypochlorite in my life, fortunately, I didn't find no one. But if someone is allergic to hypochlorite, I will use maybe something, you can use chlorhexidine, you can use something like that, but it depends on what is allergic. If it's chlorine, the problem is chlorine, you have to avoid also the use of chlorhexidine. Maybe you can use other irrigants like Q-Mix or something like that. It never happened to me. I don't know if Dimitar, you have a patient with this kind of problem. I hope no. Thank you, Oscar. What do you do? Hey, root resorption is another story. We can do a webinar dedicated to resorptions. Yes, we want the Europeans, fortunately, also here. Okay, Boris. We can say goodbye to everyone. Is it okay? I can't hear you. I can't hear. Open your microphone.
Yeah. Thank you for all of you guys. I believe the lecture was interesting.
All the things.
Serena will love. Okay.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
all the
Oscar.
things. Yes. China is midnight again. Every time, no problem. And we will, for good habit of stay over line. Now, thank you for support. Oh, we have so many fans. So now we will have our host, Ming. He will give some prediction of next webinar this month. So we will see you soon online again. And
Still stay tuned for our Facebook. We will.
He's already falling asleep just now, maybe. So let's wake up again and still have the football team.
No, I never got a football team. I played basketball.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, so we will have fun. Abby, you have something to say?
Yeah, and Dr. Boris, don't forget your gift to the dentist who answered the questions. So this is the most important.
Yeah,
For the
sure.
dentist.
We have to keep the promise.
I
Yeah,
just shared the information to contact me tomorrow. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time. And also thank you, Dr. Tony, for your time. And thank you all for joining us together tonight. We have a great time and learn a lot.
Yes. Every time we try to learn something, and every time we stay here and try to behave like a dentist, we will, even one day we will dream of being a dentist with so many education like Dr. Tong. So thank you all. Thank you for the opportunities we get together. See you.
See you soon, and thank you
guys. See you.
Thank you. See you. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.